please call the roll.
Brooks.
Here.
Beard. Here. Stelling.
Here.
Bowman.
Here.
Swallow. Here. Dowling.
Here.
Martin.
Here.
Winters.
Here.
All right, we have a quorum. Item 4 is discussion and action on the consent agenda. All of the following items which concern reports and items of a routine nature normally approved at city council meetings will be approved by one vote of the council. Any member of the council desiring to discuss an item on the consent agenda may request that it be removed from the consent agenda and placed for discussion as the next item on the regular agenda. It will then be considered separately. The consent agenda consists of consideration and action on the following items. Item A, approval of the minutes of the regular meeting of January 18th, 2022. Item B, approval of the minutes of the special meeting, January 25th, 2022. Item C, approval of the minutes of the special meeting, February 9th, 2022. And item D, approval of claims in the amount of $288,652.17 and payroll expenses of $181,842.29. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I motion to approve the consent agenda. Second.
Have a motion by Mr. Stelling, a second by Mr. Winters to approve the consent agenda. Is there any further discussion? Please call the vote.
Stelling.
Yes.
Winters.
Yes.
Beard. Yes. Brooks.
Yes.
Dowling.
Yes.
Swallow. Yes. Martin.
Yes.
Bowman.
Yes. Item 6, we'll get into reports from staff. Street and Alley Committee meeting from January 25th, 2022. I don't even remember.
We discussed, I believe, the price of the bucket truck, but possibly raising it.
That and the work order system, we're about to
Yeah.
see.
Yeah.
So we didn't have a lot of business. In fact, we were supposed to have a meeting today, and we didn't have that meeting. It's slow time. They've been crack sealing. They did some crack sealing in town and then out at the airport, and then working on cutting trees and other projects.
We've had a little bit of weather the last couple of weeks as well.
They have done some road clearing and whatnot. So. Any questions regarding the Street and Alley Committee meeting? All right. Next item is the Planning Commission special meeting on January 25th, 2022.
So that would be both the Planning Commission, the Board of Adjustments, and we had the special meeting for City Council where we did training with Daniel McClure from OMAG. I think it was great training. Most of you guys were there, and I think it helped give some direction to our Planning Commission and Board of Adjustments members, I believe. Did you guys have any other input on that?
All right. Thank you. Item D is the Water and Wastewater Committee meeting on January 27th, 2022.
Actually, all this stuff's kind of out of date. I'm going to defer to Angelica on some of that, but some of the equipment update, I just talked to Drake again and said we've been trying to get some pumps in. We've got 3 pumps in. There's still some others on order. It's like everything is difficult to get. Lift pumps, I believe we talked about, we've been looking at trying to get some in. Did we have one on stock, or we just got one in and then one went out? So
We got one in, then one went out.
yeah, and then then we're looking for another one, not till possibly August before it comes in. And then the rest, work order system will be talked about later, and then the water well and high school project will let Angela say, because I think they're pretty much done.
I have those as part of my city manager's report, so
Yeah.
we'll make it shorter later. But the water well in the well field is completed. The electrical piece has been completed. Right now, we're waiting on a piece to be able to hook the generator up to the well, and that is on back order indefinitely. We don't really know when that's going to be. Bill Myers has made a recommendation that we go ahead and remove that from the project so we can close that project out where we have grant monies tied to that. We can close the project out, get our REAP grant monies reimbursed to us as well, and then when the part comes in at some point in time in the future, we would just pay them outright to install that piece. So
When you said that part was minor, I mean, just $800 or something. So
Yeah, I think
it should be-
he said, I think between the part and the labor to install it was about $800
Yeah.
as it currently set, so. So that will be something that we'll probably talk about at our next city council meeting.
All right. Any questions from the council? Thank you. Next item is the Alva Hospital Authority meeting on January 31st, 2022. Mr. Bowman.
The meeting was pretty routine. The only thing of significance is the hospital is having some issues with the new billing company. They're working diligently to correct the issue. I think that the billing company had some folks that quit or retired or whatever. Anyway, they're not getting the level of service they thought they should get, and that's about it, really.
Council have any questions for Mr. Bowman?
Did the cost of repairing the damage that was caused by water at the homestead, did the cost of refurbishing those homes come in?
I haven't, you mean the apartment?
Yeah.
I haven't seen cost on that. Angelica, have you seen anything on that?
I haven't seen cost on that, but we are working to get that turned into the insurance company so that we can get that repaired. So that we can get insurance to pay for the repair of those homes.
I've had a few people asking about, some people have gone to claims. It's about 26 people that the hospital was sent out to collections, I guess, or filed against or something. I'm not real sure.
Big question for management.
So
Yeah,
don't give her anything about that.
You know, I think billing, there's been a lot of discussion on billing. The company, I think it was from Colorado, really didn't do them a very good job. They've got a new company. A new company is there now. They've had to write off a lot of dollars. Makes me wonder why you would have to do that for whatever reason, but
I think it was maybe the filings and it was in the paper, the legal filings or something, that they just felt that it was over small amounts. What did you ask about?
I know they are trying to get billing current. That's the biggest complaint I've heard from citizens. It takes 90 days, so now whether that's part of it, I don't know.
I'd say on any of those, neither one of us will be able to answer those questions. It's going to be either the financial officer or the CEO. And they'd welcome a phone call. Any other questions regarding the hospital report? Thank you. Next item is the Arena Authority meeting on February 1st.
I did get the agenda for the February 1st meeting. It looks like they went into executive session, and I don't have the minutes to be able to determine if they took any action on the executive session items, and then had some updates from their subcommittees. When I get the minutes from this meeting, I'll go ahead and send them out, but she did not have them prepared at this time. I can send out the January minutes. She did send those to me. If you guys would like to see those minutes, I'd be happy to email them out.
I could go ahead and email them out, I'd say.
And as I get the February ones, if I get them before the next meeting, I'll email them out as well.
Any questions regarding the Arena Authority? All right. Next item is the Ordinance Committee meeting on February 1st, 2022. Mr. Stelling.
I know we went over several ordinances. I know for sure one business. I think we kind of got it kind of narrowed down to send to Rick. We kind of looked at some changes. Also, I believe, was it the trash one?
Nuisance or
It was sanitation.
Oh, it was sanitation.
one.
Yeah, sanitation. And then
And
I
then
think,
talked about the,
ATV or
yeah, we talked about it, the ATV one possibly, and then, which we need to send it to public safety, I
yes,
believe.
We've received that. I guess
Okay.
those- I don't-
Yeah. And then I can't remember if we,
or did we start that?
no, we started it in Ordinance Committee, and then we talked about a Public Safety Committee, and that Public Safety Committee, the Police Department is going to work to bring us their recommendation.
because there were some minor changes, just I had the example from Okarchi, and I believe Angelica bring off some others and stuff, so, I think that's basically it. I think we've got ordinance done, but, we need to work on our fee schedule to get, because a lot of things tied to the business one and some of our ordinances, to where we don't list the cost of things to where they go out of date, so we need to update our fee schedule just across the board, so we gotta work on that before we get some of these ordinances passed.
Any questions regarding the ordinance committee? We will have a discussion on one of them here in a little bit.
Is there a specific objective other than just the updating of it that we want to tackle with the sanitation or the nuisance ordinance? Like, is there a specific instance that you know of that we're trying to remediate those for, or is it just general updates?
With sanitation, general updates is part of it, but I know we're wanting to get out of competing with local businesses on roll-off dumpsters, and we're also trying to,
We address the
we're
language,
cleaning up quite a bit of language that has to do with,
like types of barrels and,
Yeah.
And then also anywhere where we're talking about the landfill, changing that language to
To
transfer station, so,
Oh,
both things.
it's kind of just updating to where, like, hopefully we started a number of years ago going to poly carts, so we needed to update that language to where, once we move into those, everything, and actually there it said, about, some of the cost and number of times picked up, which we changed that language to be to where it be determined by the council instead of it being in the ordinance, because like I said, sometime we have to change one little wrinkle in there, and then we gotta revisit that, so a lot of those things, we throw it back on the council to determine.
any other questions regarding the ordinance committee? All right, thank you. Next item is Personnel Committee, and before we get into that report, I would like to, along with Angelica, recognize some employees who have met criteria for recognition. And that would be all of our members of the water department. We mentioned this at the last council meeting, but didn't have a big crowd. But we do have quality this evening, and we're going to go ahead and do some recognition. Of course, you guys know that on November 30th, we had a special meeting to put the water department to work, basically, because of the line that broke on the north side of town here. They worked for basically 3 days straight on that, turned around and had another water line break on Noble, and worked and got that repaired. And it was cold, and it was wet, and it was long hours, and it was definitely above and beyond the call of duty. I know that's what you sign up for, but it's not supposed to happen that frequently and for that long a period of time. And so we do want to recognize all the members of the water department, and if there's any others that helped out, we've got all their certificates here. I'll go through and just read them off. But Chance Zerniak, Josh Hansel, Dustin Case, Rodney Mustard, Russell Murrow, and Drake Lewis. These employees are all going to receive
A free day of pay, 2 movie tickets to Rialto, and a dinner for 2 at their restaurant of choice inside city limits.
Drake.
See, I told you they were going to be sad they didn't come.
You're the only one that gets all those things.
Hey, you did
Oh.
Can we get a picture of you? Ah, great.
hold on.
There you go.
Don't do it.
Angelica wants one.
I know.
It's not official till it happens on Facebook, right? Thank you.
Thanks, Greg.
So you can tell them tomorrow that because they didn't come, they don't get those things, and it's just you. They can have a
They
certificate.
get a certificate.
That works for me.
Okay, now we can have Personnel Committee meeting report.
The agenda included in the packet's not going to be terribly accurate to what we ended up discussing. This was shortly after Angelica had announced her resignation. So we spent it ended up, I know at least some of us were here for 3 hours that day. Just kind of having a conversation with Angelica about the struggles that she faced on the job, what we could do better, and how, some options that we might have, looking at, organization charts, and things like that. It is basically an exit interview that we conducted to see where we needed to go. And that consumed basically the entirety of that conversation. I think there was a little bit of discussion as we start into our next budget cycle in regards to our payroll and how that's going to look for personnel expenses next year with the 7% CPI that was released. Or it was 7% or 7.5%?
I think it was at 7.1. I think
7.1. And kind of how we can navigate that and what that's going to look like going forward, given that we've traditionally offered a CPI increase across the board for all employees.
Any questions for Mr. Winters? Thank you, Daniel. Next item is the Alva Public Library Board meeting on February 14th. Mr. Downing.
I guess the librarian financial data was pretty on par from what we're understanding and what I've seen. We've not increased in any particular department above 50%, so I think everything looked good there. As far as state aid funding, we did receive the state aid funding that I talked about last time, which was about just over $8,500. We reviewed the technology plan, which is not necessarily something that is required by law or any sort of restrictions, but something that the library wants to start doing to be forward-looking. We just received it today. We haven't approved it, and we'll probably approve it at the next one. It was certainly not the most strict one that I've ever seen. We didn't list out hard limits for prices and individual items, but it did talk pretty well about the overall goal that the library would like to achieve, which is kind of being that stop to allow people to have access to the internet that wouldn't necessarily normally have it, and to be able to be a good resource in that way with the technology. To keep up to date, but not breaking the bank would be a good view of it. It also mentioned kind of outlining some of the plans that they have for grant money in returns to allowing external Wi-Fi. The library projects also, they did receive a furniture update. They received the furniture that they purchased with grant for the magazine area. I think the staff seemed to think that it was nice and it was comfortable enough to read in but not to fall asleep in, as I think was kind of how that discussion went. We have looked at updating our youth series, and it's important that we're doing this also with local schools so that we can determine books that meet, I don't know what this is, the Lexi score. I'm more familiar with the AR points system that they use. But basically so that we can have books challenging enough to still keep young readers in there so that they can be involved with the discussion for a young age, but still difficult enough to still challenge them to continue their growth, so that if you're in 5th grade, then you have a middle school or high school reading level. And kind of seeing where they can close the gaps on keeping series that match that criteria, because that's what a lot of young readers are looking at, and then partnering specifically with the schools so that we're not double, so that they can, if they don't have the middle school, to have what they don't have. They also, apparently I believe this is the west side of the area where that drive-through is. I don't think a lot of public goes back there, but they discussed that with the last snow that we had, that there was some leaks in that area that they're going to assess moving forward, but nothing really, from my understanding of like a budget or what that would require or the severity of that. They discussed about their youth program. They're thinking about starting that in the first week of March, and they're developing plans with whether if to weigh the pros and cons of in-house and the little, I think they call them the little Explorers to-go packs that they're able to take there. The idea being is that we don't want to fund people to do both at the same time, but be cost effective in splitting that up to have enough for the people who can't stay, can take some but not, I guess, abuse the system. And that works out well. And that pretty much concludes it. There was some board member discussion. Just a brief question, if you've seen anything in the news nationally, there's lots of restricted books and stuff like that that have been kind of in the news, and we've not restricted anything, and I think our librarians personally, from just what little they've discussed, have a good policy. Have you read the book? Do you understand what it's actually about? I think they threw around the idea that somebody once complained about nudity in a book based off of animal characters. You know what I mean? So a rat doesn't have to wear pants in a book. It can be considered nude. But yeah, so it's, stuff like that. But that pretty much closes it up.
I agree. Council have any questions? All right, thank you, Taylor. Next item is the Alva Airport Commission meeting. We had a anonymous donation funding to purchase new furniture for the lobby out there at the airport and in the terminal. And so we, the airport manager brought some quotes and pictures of some furniture options, and the board voted to go ahead and one of those items was a refrigerator, another one was a couch, that the board voted to approve the purchase of those. But as far as tables and chairs, the board wanted the manager to come back with some other options for consideration. So that was actually a pretty lengthy discussion, preferences and things of that nature. So we'll have that again on the next meeting. And then the other major item that we discussed was the development of the annual goals for the manager. Without going too much into detail, he's really doing a great job. The pilots on the ground out there really appreciate the work he's doing. Board members appreciate the work he's doing. The majority of the things that were listed as goals or areas for improvement, a lot of them are going to be affected by this presentation we're having a little bit with the iWork system. So we weren't able to discuss that very much, other than that it could help him being a more effective manager. So I'm happy to try and answer any questions that the council would have. All right. And Angelica will report a little bit more regarding grants in her report, right?
I can.
We're going to talk about with regard to the finances?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, I see what you're saying.
All right, next item is a Public Safety Committee meeting on February 15th, 2022. Mr. Dowling.
Right. The major thing that we discussed during that Public Works meetings was the safety ordinances. We basically went over those and recommended some changes, or not necessarily changes, just gave a kind of an overview of the ATV and then the other ones of Winoka, and then we also reviewed Okeen and those ordinances. I think, made recommendations of kind of what we thought and liked between the two of them to the chief of police, and he was going to review those and kind of get those back. And I don't know if if our discussion was what was passed to the other committee, or vice versa.
Vice versa.
And then, then we did not, and we discussed kind of where we're standing on the 522 district rate change, which we've gathered information and have gotten some of that back, but still processing. But hope to have some more information there. And we also looked at Winoka's membership, which we've gotten that, kind of discussing the pros and cons of that one, which they have a little bit different than us. I think they agreed to go with a rate charge or something like that to institute membership. And
It's a little bit of both. Those both pieces. They're included in their ordinance with their membership rate. Also is their rate structure for their ambulance fee schedule as well.
And And that's, yeah. And I think that pretty much covers it. I think the major thing that we're looking at with the ATV ordinance was one, to kind of bring the scooters underneath that fold. And then there's kind of, I guess, a gap, whether if you can drive an ATV in the vehicle, because of we're reflecting on the state, and the state's kind of removed some of their statutes limiting that. So we're looking at pushing that down.
Yeah.
Does council have any questions? Okay. Thank you, Taylor. Next item is Park and Building Committee meeting on February 16th, 2022. That would be, who's in charge of that one? Greg? That's right. I
guess
remember
I'm
I gave you the
senior
senior.
now.
You're the senior member.
We mainly discussed the pool. That was another one that the pool discussion took over with. The main discussion was the rec park and the pool, and how we can combine those as an entity for Alva. That's what do we call it, pool?
Parks and Recreation?
No,
Aquatic Center?
no, we had another name to combine it all. Anyway, really, I think we're going to talk about mostly what we talked about here in a little bit, so. I don't have anything to report, I guess.
Yeah, well, we talked about the contract with Kimley Horn, and we did visit a little bit about what it looked like to potentially combine parks and the recreation complex into a Parks and Recreation Commission.
And we also talked about the work order system.
And we did, we talked about the work order system in every one of these meetings, I think. Any questions regarding the Parks and Building Committee meeting?
Has there been any further update on the disc golf thing?
We haven't talked about that in a while. We need to bring that back up.
I was driving somewhere between here and Enid, either through Anoka or there, and I just happened to drive by somebody's property in a farmland that had, it looked like a disc golf course set up kind of, and I was, oh, hey.
Any other questions from the council? All right, next item is the Alva Recreation Complex Board meeting on February 16th, 2022. Ms. Swan, you weren't there, were you?
Yes, I was, but I didn't know I was going
Oh.
to talk. Let me look at my notes.
I have the minutes pulled up.
Oh, okay. We looked at the damages, the repairs that had been done on the building, and discussed some of the things that we were not really satisfied with. We went outside and looked at some things even outside that, and let's see, what else did we do? That was really about it. We talked about the soccer seasons and the basketball seasons and things that were coming up. And we talked about the fact that, or was that later, we're gonna do a dinner, a dinner for them here pretty soon. But I don't think that we brought that up, did we, at this meeting? Oh, we talked about the driveway that needs some work done on it. And that was about it.
Is there a timeline for the reimbursement of insurance?
I anticipate that we talked to the insurance adjuster on Thursday of last week, and he said the check would be issued, he thought by Friday, and so we should see, I'm anticipating that we see that check come in this week sometime.
All right.
So it doesn't cover the entire cost of the project that we did out there, it just covers the replacement of the roof, and that was all. So $217,000.
Any other questions regarding the Rec Complex Board meeting? Thank you. Now you know. Welcome aboard.
I would have been better prepared.
Sorry about that. All right, the next item is the Tourism Tax Commission meeting on February 16th. Mr. Martin?
Okay. We had a longer than normal meeting this go around. We didn't meet for a couple of months, so items kind of stacked up on us. But each item that came up was approved unanimously for the full amount. The first one being Salt Fork June Jam for $3,500. Northwest Oklahoma Junior Rodeo Association They have 2 events, so therefore they have 2 requests. Both of those were approved for $6,000 apiece. And then the Alva Police Department and EMS, I can't remember what they're calling the event, but it's going to be a new thing this year. The main thing is going to be a barbecue contest, and then it's going to be a full weekend. Involves some live music, and the race organization is going to get involved with cruise and maybe some car shows. So it's a new thing that they're going to try and get going. Kind of has the idea of, a lot of future growth, so something pretty cool there. And it was approved for $14,250.
And I don't think that was talked about at the meeting, but it is, they're planning to use as a fundraiser
Yes.
to raise money for equipment for the police department, so.
Sounds like a pretty cool thing.
That's what, listening to the meeting, it sounded like it was pretty extravagant, it seemed like they had
Yeah.
some interesting ideas about.
Yeah, I think it's got a lot of potential. Other than that,
Any questions for Connor?
I believe it was discussed at the meeting. Did the junior rodeo say how much they made off the last, or what was the total that they made off the last rodeo last year?
I'm not sure. I can't remember.
Okay.
If I remember correctly, you can tell me that I'm wrong, but they take the entry fees that are paid by the kids, and they try to give all of those entry fees back in prizes to the kids.
That's what
And I don't think they generate revenue. I think it's more about providing that opportunity for the kids, and they're just trying to cover some of their expenses.
I think that was somewhere around like $24,000.
Yes, it was just under $24,000 that they give back.
Attended, yeah. So.
Any other questions regarding the tourism tax meeting?
Item number 10, on the litigation, is that against the city or the city against somebody else?
That's the city against somebody else. If you want, we can get an executive session and discuss it in here.
That's right.
Not today, but at a different meeting. Any other questions from the council? All right, Connor, you want to go ahead and get a finance meeting?
Yeah. Had good discussion. Talked about the ARPA funds and where we're going to allocate those and what to do with those funds. Mr. Trent Goss was at the meeting, discussed CD rates and renewals that are coming up. Talked about equipment purchases and the issues we're having there and what we can do to be more efficient. Some numbers for you here. Our total cash balance across all funds is at 2.6 million and some change. Angelica had a report that had an interesting piece on it. Just for some quick info here, year to date cash deficit that we've been working against. January 2021 general fund deficit was at 1.8 million. So year to date, January 2022, it's currently at just over $1 million. So thought that was something good to highlight. Sales and use tax for January is $382,000. It's up 9% from January of 2021, up 4% from December. The general fund all funds have collected 58% of projected revenue. We've expended 54%. So, what was that number as it sits right now, Angelica? As far as cash flow, 300.
So as far as income, basically
Yeah.
net income essentially, so we collected $350,000 above our budgeted expenses as it sits right now, which is about $50,000 more than what we were projecting to be through the course of our budget at this time.
Said general fund, I meant across all funds.
Any questions from the council? Thank you. Next item is the mayor's report. I will let you know that the Congress of Mayors that was scheduled to be this Thursday and Friday this week due to the inclement weather, it has been pushed back to next week, the 3rd and 4th. And that was something I was planning to attend, but with the reschedule, I'm not going to be able to attend. I don't know that we're going to have anybody there this year, but if anybody does want to attend, it's still an option. They're changing the venue from the Reed Center in Midwest City to Rose State College, and so they'll still have good facilities to use, and they'll spend some time at the Capitol as well. But that's going to be next week. If you want to attend that, get with Angelica, and she can make that happen. The Chamber of Commerce having their gala Thursday evening, so I think everybody is probably aware of that, and hopefully you got your tickets, but that's always a good event for the community. Angelica will probably talk about this, but I want to encourage our council members to join the employees at the rec park next Thursday, the 3rd, for the annual Employee Appreciation Day, and we'll be grilling burgers, and hopefully we've got some council members there that can help cook and hand out or serve the employees, so they don't have to serve themselves on the day that we're trying to show them how much we appreciate them. So it is a posted meeting with no business. So there will be, so don't worry about a quorum. We'll have that covered. Next Friday on the 4th, Jody Lewis will be. Angelica and I talked with Jody last week after we had had our special city council meeting. Jody will be here on the 4th from 8:30 till noonish, and we'll have our mini strategy session to identify what we're looking for in the next, what qualities we're looking for in the next city business manager. So that'll be next Friday. And then on the 19th, we will have our council and department head retreat for budget purposes. So that'll be out at the VOTEC. That again is going to be was it 8 to noon-ish?
We'll for sure provide lunch that day. If you want me to provide lunch for you on Friday the 4th, if you'll let me know. If you need to get back to work, you don't have to have lunch, but if you'll kind of RSVP, I guess, so we know who to provide lunch for on the 4th.
We are expecting to be finished with that strategy session by noon.
Yes, but if it helps you to have lunch provided so you can just go back to work, then please let me know.
Really, other than that, we'll have I did speak to people for the positions on the search committee, so we'll talk about that in a little bit. I really don't think I have anything else to report at this time. Does anybody have any questions? All right.
Go ahead, you didn't introduce me, sorry.
Mrs. Brady, business manager's report.
I did an update on the high school fire hydrant project. That is completed, or pretty much completed. I think we're wrapping up some things. Visiting with our engineer on making sure that we get those properties set back correctly. Obviously, the plan was to bore that entire project. There was expected some damage to be to 1 yard, not all the yards in that block, so we are working to make sure that those get righted as well. Well, the rec center roof, we talked about that. That's already been completed, and the water department has still been working with Myers Engineering to get some GIS mapping taken care of for our well field and for town, so we can get that put into a system where we know where our lines, water and sewer are at, and we have someplace that we can update going forward so that when we have people who retire, we don't lose all of that information when they do retire. So we've been working on that project for a couple months, and I think we still probably have at least a month or two left on that. So we talked about the street department, the work that they've been doing lately. We did hire, I know we had to post a position for a grant writer, a part-time grant writer. We have filled that position. Brooke Fuller started with us a couple of weeks ago. She's already doing a great job. She's been training with Dr. Decker at Northwest Tech to kind of learn the ropes and move some things forward for us. I know she'll be working closely with the Parks and Building Committee and the Pool Committee on the pool piece as well. So Carter talked about the ARPA funds. We had a discussion in the Finance Committee about the ability to apply for some additional grant funding for ARPA funds and what that looks like, and how, we have to provide a match for those funds, and just talking about the different ways that we can provide that match. Our ARPA funds, they've initially, when those monies came out, we were going to have to use them for infrastructure, nothing but infrastructure. They've loosened it back a little bit where they will allow for some revenue loss, replacement. I know I need to listen to another webinar that was had recently about basically lessening some of those restrictions again. So hoping to be able to apply for some more funds. Water Department, we've been talking about what our needs are for water infrastructure, because that was the original intent of those funds. And looking at what it would take to get everything up to speed from the well field all the way to town and the things that we need in town. So, possibility of a lot of dollars that we potentially could be applying for, but trying to make sure we have our ducks in a row. And Brooke has already assisted some and will continue to assist us there. One of the things we talked about also in Finance Committee, I did want to point out, is we have spent money to pay for our apron expansion project out of the airport fund. We spent money out of the rec center fund to pay for our roof replacement. I did mention that the insurance company is replacing about $217,000 of those monies. The FAA, we received reimbursement of about $576,000 from them as well. So we're looking at adding about just under $800,000 back to our pooled cash fund. Hopefully in the month of February. The last little bit of it may come into March, but our cash position is just looking substantially better. And I just have a few staff here, but I definitely want to thank them. They worked hard to make that happen. I'm just going to touch base. The employee appreciation lunch, we'd love to have everybody out for that. I know it may not seem like much, but it is important for the employees, for you guys to touch base with them, know they have your support. It makes a big difference. And I would love it if you guys could be there and spend a little bit of time, even if it's not for the entire time. Just what you can come out and say hi would be great. One thing I forgot to talk about at Finance Committee, but I will let you know, is coming probably on our next month's agenda. So in the past, we've approved 2 different OG&E bills that were larger amounts than what is above what my spending limit is. When they were redoing the street lighting and converting it all to LED, it appears that we have not been charged for the street lighting from August through January. And so with the changeover in our AP clerk, the new AP clerk wasn't looking for it. The old AP clerk had moved on to change roles, and so it kind of got missed that we hadn't been paying that bill. Not that we hadn't been paying that bill, we hadn't been billed for it. How about I say it that way? We hadn't been billed for the street lighting for that time frame, so we will have another, hopefully the last bill that is above my spending limit, so that we can get that taken care of. And now our new AP clerk knows what to look for, and she'll make sure that that's on the bill, and if it's not, be calling to find out why it's not on the bill. So I'm trying to get some further clarification from OG&E why that didn't happen. I don't know if it was just changeover or for sure what happened, but I think the bill that we got in was about $57,000, but it does include August through January, so, which is about I think $10,000 a month that we're missing for those pieces. So I think that's all I have.
Council have any questions for Angelica? All right, thank you. Item 7 is remarks and inquiries by citizens. If anybody would like to make comments, you can approach the podium, and you may have 2 minutes to share your remarks with the council. All right.
And no surprise of all surprises, our soundbar isn't working again, so I'm going to call them.
Okay. I'm going to ask, are you in a hurry?
No.
Okay. I was going to move you to item 9 instead of 10, to kind of, if you did want to leave, you could leave a little bit earlier.
It doesn't matter, whichever way you want to do it. It won't make much difference probably.
Okay. Let Mike, I'll go ahead and move you.
So obviously we have user error here. Hold on. Apparently,
I might move you to 8.
I know, you may get moved way up. I can't type the right number. The pressure is on, I apologize. I'm having issues. Okay, John, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you all right. Can you hear me?
Yeah, you're as loud as you can go. I'm still.
Dang. Perfect. Well, I'll make sure we speak up a little bit for you and then, go from there. So are you guys ready for us then?
Yes.
Yes. Dang. Perfect. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn the time over to Steve, as we talked about a little bit earlier. Steve Holt is my technical expert. He's going to share his screen and he'll walk you through the software, and like you mentioned, he's just going to take a few minutes and show you what we have and what we're offering for you guys. Yeah, I appreciate everybody's time tonight and allowing us to be part of this meeting. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. So as John had mentioned, my name is Steve Holt. I'm one of the technical experts here at iWork Systems. On my end, we've got John Goebel. He is the account executive for community development, and Devin Vogelsberg is the account executive for public works. Between the three of us, we've met with Angelica and her team, quite a few different staff members there within the city, going through some demonstrations and answering questions that may have been brought up. So really what we want to do today is just give you a brief background on iWork Systems, who we are, our customers there in your state, and then I'm going to give you just a brief snapshot of some of the different modules that we talked about, and then open it up to questions. So iWork Systems were actually founded back in 2001, and we're headquartered in Logan, Utah. And since 2001, our main market focus has always been around public works departments as well as community development departments. We were the first web-based system on the market to offer something like this to the local and state governments. And it is accessible from anywhere that you have an internet connection, and that can be on any device as well. Throughout the years, we've built a strong client base. We've got over 2,000 customers throughout the U.S. and Canada. Just a handful of customers there within your state. I believe we've provided some references to Angelica and her team. Again, this is just a handful of them there in your state. If we need additional references, or if you need those references from Angelica, let us know. We'd be happy to provide that. And then then what makes iWork Systems unique from other software providers out there, as I mentioned before, easy accessible from anywhere. As long as you have an internet connection, you can utilize this.
We lost you, Steve. Are you still there?
Sections. Oh, did you lose me? We lost there, Steve. Oh, okay. Sorry about that. So I was saying easy accessible from anywhere, meaning, they can utilize the software out in the field on any device. So if it's a cell phone or a tablet, they're working on work orders out in the field, they're doing inspections, they're working on code violations. They also can utilize it back in the office on their desktop. Our software is highly configurable as well, so we understand not two municipalities do business the exact same. So during our setup and implementation, that's when we would work with Angelica and all the different departments to configure the software exactly how they would need it. And then we don't charge a per seat license fee, it's unlimited users. So anybody that needs access to the software will have their own login, whether that's the mayor, one of the council members, anybody within the departments can have their own login. You can also set restrictions on logins so they only have certain functionality, and that could be even just a read only to the software. And then we offer unlimited training and support for the life of our agreement. So as you grow, as each department grows, they hire more employees, we'll get them a login, and we'll train them on the software at no additional cost. Obviously, as you use the system, if there's questions, additional system configuration, they can call our tech support. Again, that's no additional cost. Now, going over to the software, and then I'll kind of open it up for any questions that you may have. Now, this will encompass kind of a lot of different areas. So in the Public Works Department or Public Works realm, this is going to cover the work orders, signs, pavement, water, sewer. It's also going to cover facilities, fleet, and then citizen engagement. It all kind of goes through the work management system, how you can disseminate the work to different departments and track different things. So if we open a work order, just some of the things that can be tracked within these work orders, again, this is all configurable information for the city. So what type of information do they want to capture? They can link assets back to the work order. So if it's a pothole repair, there's a pavement center segment that they're tracking, hydrants for sewer manholes, signs. It may be multiple different assets that you may be working. Steve, we lost you again. Yeah, my phone is not liking me tonight. I apologize. So I was just mentioning they can link in any assets that they may be working on with costs associated. They can pull any employees that may be working on those work orders, any equipment, inventory, purchase orders that they may need to purchase certain items. And then obviously this can give you a cost associated. This can also work with FEMA projects or any projects in general so that you can search and report based off of just one specific thing. And then any notes or letters, and then uploaded files. You'll notice up at the top there was a pothole picture that they can take before and after pictures and save that right back to this work order. Then the key thing with any of our applications is reporting capabilities. And so any of the information that can be captured within our software is searchable and reportable. The staff can build custom reports. We can build and save reports for council or any of the reporting capabilities here. So I could go in for a council report and I could pull in last month's data of work orders that we performed. We can group the information, break it out by different departments, different repair type items, and then it can calculate any costs in here. So again, any of the information that can be tracked within the software is searchable and reportable. And so that's kind of a brief snapshot into the work management and the asset tracking side of things. This is going to kind of look the same for the permitting and the code enforcement. So For permitting, everything is tied back to a parcel, to a tax ID number, so that you can see a history of everything that is going on at the parcel. So again, same thing here with configurable fields within the Building and Code Enforcement Department. I can see a history on this property, so if there is any code violations, we can open up the actual code case that we're working on, see the activities, the violations that we've tracked, any letters, any pictures that we've uploaded. Everything is tied together on the back end, so multiple departments can see what's going on. Load in your fee schedules in here as well, so you can track fees and payments, any of the inspections that are taking place, any of the plan reviews with the associated plans, and then any letters that have been issued. This can all be done online through an online portal that we would set up for citizens and contractors, that they can submit their applications, they can request inspections, and even pay fees and just get general updates on their permit process. So I'll open it up for questions. At this point, I gave just a brief snapshot of, multiple things there. Is there any questions that the council may have for us?
Because, is this program primarily accessed through a web browser, or do you have like an application or anything like that?
Great question. So it is coded in HTML5, so there's no mobile app or anything that they have to download. So they would visit iwork.net. Each person is going to have their own username and password that they would sign in with. So it's going to work on any device and any internet service as well.
Is there any browser restrictions like Edge, Chrome, or Safari?
There's not. We do build and test in Chrome, and so we do recommend that you use Chrome if you can, but it will work in Safari, Edge, Internet Explorer, any of those.
Just out of curiosity, who owns the data put into that application, and do we as the city have a right to request like a copy of the database with that information that we provided into it, or do you guys have another way of like porting that information to a different platform or something to that effect?
Yeah, great question. So outlined in our agreement, it does state that the city is the sole owner of the data. We utilize Amazon Web Services, the GovCloud. We back up that information for all of our customers multiple times per week in multiple locations. We give the customer, the city, the ability to export any of the information at any time through the reporting capabilities like I showed you with the work orders, that you can export the information into Excel, PDF, Word, or .csv files if it's finance reports. You can also request copy of the data if there's cancellation notices in place and things like that. But you guys are the sole owner of the data. We don't hold that hostage by any means.
Do you have any ISO certifications, and can you provide a SOC report?
Yeah, so everything is SSL encrypted, and then everything, like I said, through Amazon Web Services. Can you say the last part of that one more time? I was having a hard time hearing the last part of that.
Can you provide your most recent SOC report?
Yes, for qualifications.
Sorry, it broke out again. I don't know if someone's closer to the phone, if they can...
SOC?
SOC, SOC, SOC.
Can you provide your most recent SOC, SOC report?
I wouldn't have that, but I can definitely get with our IT department and see if they can provide me with something like that.
And do you have anybody that's certified in AWS or?
Yes, we do, yeah. So our development team is all certified in AWS.
I would speak a little bit. I've got some of the guys here. These three have all seen the program. I told them, with how things are moving forward, they have to be the ones to sell the program to you guys, to say that they're going to use it. And I feel like it's a program that them as well as the street department can all get behind. We started looking at work order programs, trying to move away from having to print out work orders or sit someone in an office all the time to just manage that. I think it would allow them to be a lot more efficient and get their work orders on the fly. And Adam was looking at permitting software anyway. It's something that Brian has really been pushing, has talked about several times as well. And so it happened to be that these two pieces coincided with this product. The benefit is all the information is integrated so that, Adam can see things that are going on Drake's side, Drake can see things that are going on Adam's side. Street department can see things, if they can see the water lines. The GIS mapping that we're doing, they would take that information and pull that into their system, and so we would be able to utilize what we've already done. I will, when we bring it back for council consideration, we'll talk about the prices. I mean, I would say when you look at the modules individually, not one of them really is outrageously priced, but when you put them all together, I mean, it is going to be a little bit bigger. The other side of it that I know that we didn't talk about a whole lot was the fact that it also allows for equipment maintenance, where you can put your equipment in there and keep your equipment maintenance schedule, and also your building and building maintenance schedules as well. So there's some other pieces in there that I think would be really beneficial and allow for us in our seats, as well as the city manager, to be able to see what's going on very easily. And so I think it's very beneficial. I'll let you, looks like you've got some more demonstration for them.
I was just kind of pulling up the map here as you were talking about that, being able to kind of locate everything on the map, being able to, say, click on a sign or a hydrant or, any given asset, and being able to see a history of that. When was the last time we flushed the line or did an inspection, repair work orders? You'd be able to see that all on the GIS map. Everything is tied together. And then, as she was mentioning with the facilities and things like that, you'd be able to keep track of the facilities, any of those repair work orders or maintenance schedules, and same thing with the fleet as well.
I was real glad to see something like this come up for discussion in all of our, we've literally, I think, talked about this in every one of our committee meetings. I think when we, have this back on an agenda again in the future, I really think we do need to give it some consideration, because we expect a lot out of our employees, particularly our department managers, and I think giving them the tools to be successful is paramount if we're going to have the expectations that we have. So I do appreciate you doing the demonstration here this evening. We wouldn't normally do this in front of the whole council, but being that we've already talked about it basically in front of the whole council, we thought it was appropriate and not to have 15 demonstrations. But do you have any questions for us? And I'll also open up council for any last questions.
Are you a publicly traded company or are you private?
Sorry, go ahead.
Publicly traded or private?
We're private.
I believe you said too, it takes the place of C-Click Fix, so we save money there, so
Right.
we can incorporate that into this also.
And I feel like, Ronnie, you would correct me if you think I'm wrong. I feel like user friendliness of this program and the things that we can do and make it editable, so that it functions the way we need it to, hands down above C-Click Fix.
If we implement this, are we looking at how are the employees primarily going to access this? Since it can go through any device, are we looking at issuing them a device?
We would be looking at putting tablets, but my recommendation would be putting tablets in the vehicles that, like in the water vehicles and the sanitation vehicles and the street department vehicles. And then Adam also would have a tablet issue, and Ronnie as well.
It looks like your display gives a huge amount of information. Is there a particular resolution or screen size that you would steer away from when somebody being able to actually review this? Because I imagine, like you said, it could work on any device, but I bet it would be pretty cluttered on my phone.
Yeah, so it is coded in HTML5, so it's going to recognize the size of your device, but you are right, on a smaller device, the more I have on my screen, the busier it's going to look. And so you can turn on and off different layers, whether it's on the map or within the software itself. If you're going to primarily use it out in the field on a cell phone, you can turn on and off your preferences, so it's gonna scale to your size of your screen so that I don't have to scroll over or anything like that. But it does work the best on a larger screen like a tablet or something. And we have offered 2 tablets with the purchase of the software as well. One for the building department, one for the public works tech department. And so we can at least get you some hardware there to start out with, but there will probably be some more tablets that it sounds like you would be looking to get some of the other key employees there.
What server-side language do you guys use to code this?
So it's a SQL database.
Okay.
Is that what you're referring to?
I was more the programming language that you use to pass the information from client side to server side, like if it was Java. I basically want to make sure you're not using like COBOL or something really outdated.
Oh, yeah, no, it's Java, so, and I'm not the coder side of things, so, I mean, if there's more additional information that we need to provide you there, let me know and I can get with my development team.
Okay, completely understandable. That's a pretty deep question.
As a private company, how willing are you at disclosing your most recent financials for your most recent fiscal year ending? Is that something?
Yeah, that's a good question. I would have to talk to the owners of the company and see if that was something that they were willing to do.
And how, I believe you said it, but I didn't write it down. How long have you guys been in business?
Since 2001.
Any other questions?
Can you talk a little bit about the community's use of this system?
Did you hear that?
Yes. Yeah, so citizens, contractors, they can submit certain things just like with your C-Click Fix. We have a 3-prong approach that for citizens and contractors when they're submitting certain things. So through the citizen engagement package, we'll put a link on your website that a citizen can go online. There's a pothole, they want to make a complaint or a request about any certain item, that they could go right to your website and submit the information. They could upload pictures. There would be a map associated to it, so they could drop a pin onto where the location is that's geofenced for your city. There's also a mobile app, an Android app that they can download to submit those items for requests. And there's also a texting service as well through Text.my.gov is the name of the company. It's our sister company that we would deem the city a phone number that the citizen could text in. It'd be an automated system, so say they wanted to text in pothole to your number, it would then walk them through how to submit a request or a complaint about a pothole repair that needs to take place. You could also use that for other things, when is the next city council meeting, they could text that in and it's going to link them to your website or something. You can also push information out to citizens. They can opt into receiving text messages. So you guys were mentioning earlier that you had a couple of water main breaks recently. So if something like that happened, you could actually send out a text alert to your citizens letting them know, avoid this portion of city. There's a water main break. We're working on it. Or if there's a road closure for a parade or something like that, you can push information out to those citizens that have opted in to receive updates from the city.
Would this be adaptable to, we was talking about going to the county on their deal where we text everybody.
I don't know, we'd have to ask this question. So we previously used a company called Blackboard that allows us to send text messages out. It allows us to create shape files and send it out to a selected area of town as well. Does it have any of that capability?
It does. Yep, so you would have a GIS map, so if you needed to select an area of the city and send out information to those citizens, you'd have the ability to do that.
So that'd be another system we could potentially replace. Okay.
And I know Adam and and Drake have both called and talked to the references that have been provided. I think Adam's even called and talked to some other cities outside of the references that we've been provided as well. Is that correct, Adam?
I spoke with Perry, Kingfisher, and I gave Drake a number to Yukon. And we spoke with all three of them. I actually had a face-to-face visit with John Prieston out of Kingfisher up here at Northwestern, and he showed me on his tablet, and it's everything that they're demoing and more. So firsthand, it's awesome. So.
The platform using HTML through the browser is a really flexible format. It's a lot less locked in than like if we were doing like an app-based thing. So yeah, no, it seems pretty slick. And if the big thing is it's really easy to do a slick presentation, but if they have the legwork to in process that it works. I guess, how long are the training courses that you offer?
Yeah, so training is unlimited for the life of the agreement. Standard implementations take about 60 days start to finish. Obviously, there's a lot of things that go into play there. We understand that each person and department still has a job to do. They can't shut down completely and devote their complete day to implementing the software. So we'll work around their schedule, but trainings typically are once per week. It's about an hour training, and then they'll do a follow-up call once per week to make sure that any questions are being answered, they're utilizing the system, any additional system configuration. But it is unlimited, so if you need 2 or 3 trainings one week and one the next week, it's unlimited. But like I said, it's about 60 days start to finish for the implementation.
That sounds nice for new employees who weren't here for the implementation to be able to utilize that service. What's the range of, are we looking at just 1 year contract is what we have to do, or?
That's what we had, well, I sent it to you. It's been a minute since I sent it to you. I don't remember.
I think it had a renewal of 3 years.
Is that what it was? I couldn't remember, right? Is that doable for us, Rick, or?
You can do it that way, we'd have to structure it correctly.
So their initial contract is a 3-year contract?
It's, what they normally do on those is a 1-year contract, it's not a renew if neither party gets out. But they want to have, these folks probably, I'm sure, want to have enough in it when they invest in coming here and setting this all up. But basically, you say it's going to be 3 years, but when you deal with the municipality, if we didn't have the funding, we absolutely didn't have the funding, then by Oklahoma law, Constitution, we have to get out of that agreement. And I'm sure they've dealt with Kingfisher and other places, they have to deal with that too.
Any other questions? All right, well, I do appreciate you spending some time with us this evening. It looks like a promising product potentially for our community and our municipality. So I think Angelica will probably be following up with you to get some items prepared for our next council meeting.
Okay, we appreciate everybody's time, and if there's any additional questions, let Angelica know, and we will make sure we get those answered.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other discussion on the iWorks for tonight?
Do you guys have any concerns or questions on it?
I do know Edith's about to adopt this whole program for their entire city as well.
What was the module price?
It was over her spending limit.
It was over my spending limit. I think it was going to be about $27,000 first year. That was implementation and annual
And
fees.
how many of I know it sounded like they divided it up between modules. How many modules is that?
You guys, I think we were using 6 modules, of 6 of I think like 20 some modules. They have more modules than what we were utilizing, what we would be looking at initially going with. And I think Drake had mentioned for the water department there was some additional ones that we could utilize. I know they have one for like he talked about using the cost for FEMA. I think they have a whole module just dedicated to FEMA that would be something that if we needed would be an option. trying to think, there was sidewalk maintenance, document storage module as well.
Do they just price it out per module, or is there any like, the amount of data that you're handing them? Is there any stipulations on that? Like,
I can send you the contract to look at. I don't think that there was, but it is based on a per module.
that's what,
Based on our population.
And the pricing structure is also based on our population as well, so.
they're probably getting billed per CPU and per storage space that they're taking out with AWS. I just didn't know if they're passing that cost on to us, or it's just,
Gotcha.
you pay the bill.
I know if you look at the pieces like I talked about, I think like for the street, the public works side piece, that module was about $6,000. That incorporated water and street signs and a couple other pieces. The facilities management was like $3,500. The equipment management was $3,500. The customer portal that would replace C-Click Fix, we paid $4,500 for C-Click Fix, and this was $3,500 for that.
Sounds like the price is kind of on par, and then they have that newer billing model, which a lot of people are going with, which is that you pay for what you need, not everything. But I'd definitely be, the bad thing about being a new company that's tech is if you get big, somebody who's bigger usually wants to try to buy you. So I just would be careful really about them getting bought out or something.
Well, and beyond that, just something to consider, because, Taylor's been in this boat, and I've been in this boat many times. When you're dealing with software acquisition, we're building a lot around that and what it does, and doing a full risk analysis on this of, what happens if that company folds and goes under next year. And we've built all of our processes and systems around it, and now we lose all of that because they're just gone. And what does that mean for us going forward? That's where my line of questioning was going. If they're a publicly traded company, then their financials are openly available, and we can see are they financially sound. If they're private, then they have to provide those to us, and so there's a little more concern with a private company. And then, we're also talking about the possibility of residents' names, addresses, and all of that, and creating a whole nother database of that, and additional information about those individuals, and placing it out there, and then the security concerns around that. So,
Which the software should hopefully flush some of those out.
Yeah.
A good copy of that, but.
yeah, a SOC report basically is an independent review of your security posture. That's what that is. So.
All right. Anything else? Okay. Now I'll move item 10 up to the next agenda item, and we'll come back to item 9. Item 10 is discussion and action to approve the city manager to sign an agreement with Kimley Horn to provide planning and design services for the new Hatfield Aquatic Center in an amount not to exceed $395,000. Darren Scott has joined us this evening, and I will, just before we hear from Darren, the pool finance committee, as well as the pool finance committee in great detail, has been through every piece of the contract that's up here for consideration this evening, and has recommended to the Parks and Building Committee that they recommend approval through City Council. The original first draft, I guess, of the contract included also, in addition to Hatfield Aquatic Center or the pool, it also included master planning for Hatfield Park as well as Bedrose Park, and was it a web model?
It was the applicator rendering perspectives, yeah.
And so what we're working to approve tonight is just for the pool. It does represent about 8.7, 8.8% of what the projected expenditures are for the pool. And so that's what the $395,000 is, and that is going to be pretty close to a standard percentage, as we're going to find, and it's in line with the services that Kimley Horn is going to be offering, as well as their partners for the terms of the contract. So with that, Darren, I'll let you speak a little bit.
Okay. Do you, and I don't know how much you have reviewed the contract, so we can go through by task if you want to, or we can just keep it general and then you can ask specific questions. So it's kind of up to you guys on how you'd like to do that.
He represents a big enough expense, and there's a lot of talk about the city. I'm okay going through.
Okay. Okay.
And then I will say, Darren has supplied us with, I know one of the questions that we had is, or one of the questions or concerns that Rick had, I think, was making sure that we had a way to kind of track our progress. And so he's added a fee schedule to the contract, which is what I've given to, or what he gave to you tonight, that kind of gives the cost by task. I think, Rick, your concern was making sure that we had a way to stay accountable for percentage of completion. So.
Okay. Well, just overview of the project. You know, we understand what we based off of was about a $4.5 million construction budget. There were some discussions. I know there's been some previous plans done and cost projections, and what our experience was that's kind of the range we're thinking on the budget. So we based all of the services on that. We understand that also with that there's the grant piece that goes with it. So working with the grant writer to make sure we're hitting those milestones, which right now we're thinking September is when the grant will be due. We don't know exactly the date yet. It hadn't been released, but that's what we're tracking towards. So really the upfront piece of design we want to get done before that grant application's due. So you'll have a good set of plans, documents, cost projections, everything that they know that we're ready to do this and have a good understanding of the cost. So that's kind of the first piece, and then after that, going to bidding and construction, we're thinking approximately a year. So depending on when all the funding's available, after that it'll be about a year of a construction process. So this is a several year contract and task here. So task 1.1, called coordination and design management. Basically that's just the kind of the managing of the project. All the meetings, the design review meetings, all of that we have there. The pieces that we include in 1.2 is the survey. The survey isn't included in this contract. Angelica had said that there's some other surveying work being done, so trying to get a little bit of more of an economy, some savings there. We will tell them what we need as far as the limits, and then in task 1.2 it describes basically what that survey needs to include, and we can set the limits of where that boundary should go. So we provided that. And if there's any questions along the way, just stop me in there. So.
Is it kind of like how you generally do business by having another person provide the topographical survey, or what advantages is there for having your firm perform that?
I mean, honestly, we don't do survey in-house, so we're going to be subbing to someone. So if you already have somebody you're working with, that works just as well. You know, we can provide that, but we're going to go get somebody to do it. So there's benefits probably and a little bit of cost savings, especially if you're doing all the other survey work too.
So we have a few other properties that we're having surveyed as well, so that was the thought process, was that it would potentially save us a little bit of money by having the same company do all of them.
Just that, what the cost of that?
Well, we were talking about it in the conversation that we had on Friday that we had that call, talking with Kay about what the needs for topographical, how in-depth that survey needs to be. When we originally started talking about it, we weren't thinking it was quite, I wasn't thinking, how about I say it this way, I wasn't thinking it was going to be hugely expensive, but in talking to her, sounds like the topographical study that we need to do for Hatfield Park for the big picture, we're looking at $15,000. And so I'm still talking with surveyors before I even bring that back to Finance Committee to talk about, because that's not something that I'm willing to dedicate the extent of those funds without making sure I've talked to you guys about it first. But that literally just came about on Friday, so.
So any more about the survey or anything? The next task is 1.3 geotechnical report. That is included in our scope, and what that includes is a boring company coming out, doing bores around. Once we know generally kind of where the pool is going to set, I mean, we have a pretty good idea where it's going to sit, where the existing footprint is, but we want to set 3 or 4 locations. They'll do their bores, and that'll base the structural design, pavement design, and all will be based off of that report. The other thing that typically happens with that is whichever geotech company you use, then they will typically be doing the testing reports when it's being constructed, so they can compare and make sure that what's being built is in accordance to what their recommendations were, foundations and that kind of stuff. So we have reached out to Terracon, and I know that I think Angelica, you guys have used them before, so that's who I mean, if there's someone else you'd want to recommend, we can look at it, but that's who we reached out to for the geotech.
With the task 1.1 to 1.3, what is the timeline in a matter of days or weeks or months?
Well, so task 1.1 is basically the duration of the project, because it's in the meetings, just the coordination and everything. Geotech, that's usually going to happen in the first month or two to get it going. We want to make sure we're basing our design off of those recommendations. So that'll happen pretty quick, and then survey, same thing. I mean, if we can get it, I know some surveying companies now are backed up, but typically, I mean, first couple of months, we want to make sure
Yeah,
we
they
have that.
indicated it can take between 1 to 3 months depending on the depth of the survey that we need to do there, so.
They always tell us in weeks. I don't know if weeks sounds better than months, but it's like, it's like 8 weeks. Maybe that sounds better than 2 months. I don't know. But yeah, definitely up front. That's the work that needs to be included up front, and then we'll base everything off of that. 1.4 schematic design. Really, this is the big piece of this is a 2-day workshop, which will include the pool committee. We can do a public engagement event during that time as well. Basically, it's 2 days for us to understand what we want to include with this, and then it starts understanding the pool components, talking with staff on operations and that kind of thing. So all of that will be included in that 2-day event, and then from there it goes. We'll take all that information back, and then we'll develop basically a final, what we call a final design program analysis that encompasses that, and then we'll develop a cost estimate. And usually at that point too, there's options and alternates, and you kind of pick this, you pick that to understand what pieces you want to use. So that's setting the framework as we go forward. That's what we're basing our design off of, is that schematic design. So, any questions on that task? And the other thing on that, on page 3, under meetings, you see all the consultants there that are involved, and I can tell you what each of them do. So Councilman Huntsacker, they're aquatics mechanical firm, so they do all of the mechanical design of the pool. Engineering Associates, they're MEP, mechanical, electrical, plumbing, so they do everything outside of the pool piece. I mean, everybody's coordinating together, but there's going to be some electrical in the bathhouse, just everywhere around the pool. So they do more of the general MEP work. Core Group does structural design for the pool, and that's kind of their specialty is pools and structural. They'll also help with any structural needs in the bathhouse, and then also the gazebo that we want to save. And then Small Architects, his name is Thomas Small. I know they're not named because they're a small group, but Thomas Small, he has a lot of historic preservation experience, so he'll help through we know it's going to SHPO and that whole process, so he'll help make sure the reconfiguration and what we do to the bathhouse is in line with the SHPO requirements. So he will handle all the architectural piece, and then Kimley Horn, we will manage the project and along with provide aquatics, the general layout, all the accessory pieces that go with it, the parking and lighting and all of that kind of thing. So a lot of parts together, but everyone on here, we work. This is basically, it's the aquatics team. So definitely have experience working together on it. So any questions on 1.4? Okay. 1.5, design development or 50% construction documents. So basically you're tracking along 50% complete. So basically, as you think about it, you're just continuing to show more detail on the plans. So as you get to 50%, you're starting to lock in more of finishes, kind of the finer details of what everything will look like as we move forward. And then once we get that set finalized, we'll have an updated cost estimate to make sure we're still tracking okay, and we'll have review meetings along the way. And each one of these tasks has a review meeting attached to it as far as the each submittal step. So, and then 1.6 is the final construction plans, and that's basically the plans that are suitable for bidding. So that'll be what will be used for bidding purposes, and the contractors will base their bids off of that. So that'll have everything needed for those plans. And there'll be two submittals, 95% and 100%. So typically, that's when you get the regulatory agencies involved to make sure, they get them approved. I know that whatever process there is within the city, and then also state reviews, health department, and that kind of thing. We'll sign off on them at that point prior to going to bid. And then from there, 1.7 is bidding and contract award. One of the things that I know was asked during our pool committee conversations is how do we advertise this and how do we make sure we get enough bidders? We know several GCs, general contractors, and pool builders that might be interested. So we'll definitely reach out to them, but we'll also assist with advertising and papers and making sure it gets on BidSync and all the places that contractors look. So we'll help with that. We'll attend a pre-bid conference, so contractors come, they can see the site. I mean, generally we recommend them coming and seeing it instead of just submitting a bid, not knowing what they're bidding on. So we can set those requirements in the documents to mandatory pre-bid. From there, we'll answer any questions, RFIs that come about during bidding, issue any addenda that any questions that need to be addressed through an addendum, we'll address them here. From there, once the bidding's closed, we'll tabulate the bids, we'll look at them, make sure nobody missed anything, and then make a bid recommendation to council for award. So that concludes bidding. Anything on it?
I was just going to ask, my assumption is at the bidding stage, after we've chosen that person's out, we assume that like 100% of the fundraising will be done for the pool, or is that just too wistful?
Ideally, that's what when we get to the point where we're bidding, ideally we have the funds available. So yeah.
I've seen it sometimes where if you don't have the bids or the funds available, the bids aren't going to be really competitive because they know maybe there's just a bidding exercise and you're not really going to award something. So my recommendation would be, yes, have the funds available so when you're ready to award.
Is there a percentage that you think we should have collected by that point, and how far out from now do you think that point is till we get to the?
Typically you're going to have once you award bid, we're thinking it's a year process for construction. So, I would recommend once you're ready to award the bid that you have 100% of your funds covered. And typically there's some contingency in there too. So we don't want to, bid, if you've only got 4.5, we don't want to bid a 4.5 contract and then have the risk of, something else happen and then you're not going to have those funds available. So you'll build in 5-10% contingency.
Just typically, in your experience, would you say that if the project gets 75% of the funds that it would like to have, does it have a good chance of recovering there? Or do you think to get to 100, or have you seen a project that got 60 that still was fairly successful?
I'm not, so,
Like if we got to 1.7 and we only had 80% of your funds available, would you say, hey, we should probably make sure we can get that to 100%? Or have you seen, I've seen projects get 80 to 95 and then be able to cover that last to 100.
I mean, typically we're not on the funding side of it, but I mean, I would definitely recommend to have 100%. I mean, you don't want to be into the project and get about 75% of it built and then you're having funding issues, and especially on a project like this, you can't open it. It's not a phase thing. I mean, if it's a sidewalk, you can build 75% of that sidewalk and stop, and it's.
If it looked like we were gonna max out below the projected costs, we would go back and say we need to cut some things out of the plan.
Absolutely. Value engineering, that's, sometimes, I don't like for it to happen, but sometimes there's a rebid. A lot of it depends on the contractors, how busy they are, who you can get to bid. I know on Bartlesville was a recent example, and that was about not even a year ago, probably 3-4 months ago during COVID. People are busy. They weren't busy, and then all of a sudden they got real busy, so finding interest, and it wasn't a brand new pool, it was kind of a rehab, finding contractors to bid on it. So only had one bidder. The city decided, hey, let's not just take that one bid, let's try to rebid. So went back out, did a little more like, hey, why didn't you bid on this kind of thing, and found those answers, ended up getting more bids and getting a better price. So, there's options to rebid if you don't get the right price, but there's also options to value engineer things. Contractors they're pretty good at telling you. We understood this, and maybe there was just a misunderstanding of what they were actually bidding, and working to get it within budget. They don't want to go through that whole process and not be able to do anything, so they'll typically work with you to figure out cost savings.
We've done that a little bit like with our water project. We did that with our water well replacement. It came in like, $40,000 over what we anticipated it being, and they worked, the contractor that had the lowest bid, he worked with us to try to get it down to where it needed to be, so we can make it work.
And we can bid. The other thing, if you're worried about we're not all the way to the funding where you 100%, you can bid alternates too. And we talked a little bit about where could there be breaks, and obviously parking, landscape, some of the outside components maybe don't have to go into that first base bid package. Maybe those can be alternates, and can do it that way too. So you can accept the base bid, and then as funding comes in, then say, okay, well, we can go ahead and do alternate 1, 2, whatever it is. So I think there's ways to do it, but I would recommend most of the funding be there, definitely on the base bid piece.
I'm maybe jumping ahead a little bit, but in the event that we sign this agreement, or authorize Angelica to sign this agreement, and it takes, God forbid, 3 years to get to a funding level that we're comfortable with to do this project, is there a time limit on this agreement?
We've gone a while, but I think, as you stretch out, we would probably need to reevaluate some of the cost on bidding and construction services if it stretches out. We're anticipating 2 to 3 years total.
So this is under the assumption?
Yeah.
Up to 3 years?
Yeah, but now if you come back and it's been 5-6 years of fundraising, and you say, okay, now I'm ready to bid this, it would be a matter of, hey, let's reevaluate 7 and 8 to task to make sure we're still in line.
So is the costs that are laid out here, are those due upon signing, or are they due as the tasks are completed?
They're a percentage of completion. So what we typically will do is we'll bill monthly. So if you look on page 9, you'll see the fees broken out by the different tasks. So as we complete the geotech report, if it's 15,000 of that 39.5, then we would bill that, and then we would bill a percentage of task 1.1. Schematic design, depending on how long it takes. If it's over 2 months, we'd bill half one month, half the next month. So it's all a percentage of completion, and we'll attach a progress report with that billing, so you'll know, okay, we did this piece. So there's not, I mean, we're never going to be ahead of where we're at in the design schedule. So, you know, really through, say we went all the way through September, in you had final plans, we would only build 1.1 to 1.6 in that. So, but once we provide 100% signed and sealed, ready to go plans, then we would be complete through 1.6, and then 1.7 and 1.8 would wait until it's bid.
So in that instance, we got to where we had final construction plans, we're continuing to fundraise, and it takes 5 years, and we're reevaluating. Only those last 2 items would be adjusted.
Correct, yeah.
Okay.
You know, and if you get down to it and there's a few tweaks that need to be made to the plans, and, you know, we'll have to restamp, resubmit, you know, probably have to go through the permitting process again. There may be a few small costs there, but, I mean, yeah, majority of it's already paid for, and we're not resetting anything, so. Any more questions on that piece? So the final task 1.8, construction and progress meetings. This is basically us to be observing the site during construction. So, you know, we identify when we'll be there. Basically, we anticipate about a once a month visit to see the site. Obviously, phone calls, meetings, project meetings, and all that. We'll do that, and we'll try to do some of that virtually. But we've also talked that if there's you know, you dig something up and it's like, what is this and what do we do? I mean, we don't wait until the next scheduled monthly visit to come. I mean, we'll get here and take care of any contractor needs. So, you know, we wanted to give some sort of framework of understanding that, no, we're not here every day as like a inspector. We're here to observe, make sure it's being followed, the plans are being followed, but we also want to make sure that the project's successful.
And if I understand correctly, you'll be a resource to Adam if he has, you know,
Absolutely.
questions as they're going through the process.
Yeah. Yeah, no, we're a phone call away, and, you know, I'm based out of Oklahoma City, so it's not too far to get up here. So we're used to that and understand. And luckily, with just being more virtual and people understanding Teams and all the other things you can do, there's a lot of things you can do with the phone, and let's talk about it and look at it over the phone. So, but basically, want to make sure that we're ensuring that the plans are being followed, that we'll review shop drawings, submittals, all the things that come in. I mean, there's color selection, there's you know, finishes, all of that kind of stuff that'll be mocked up and reviewed and looked at. So that's all included in that last task. You know, any change orders that may come in, monthly pay requests, we'll look at contractor progress and see if we agree with what they're billing. They bill similarly the way we would do it, where, you know, they'll give you a schedule of values of as they complete the task, and, you know, we'll look and say, did they complete those tasks, and percentage of completion, to make sure they don't get ahead. So we'll take care of all of that. And then at the end, we'll do substantial completion. All of the consultants will look at their pieces, make sure it's done in accordance, or we can do substantial completion. If there's any punch list items, we'll mark those and then come back and take care of those, and we'll review that and hopefully be ready to go. And then the other thing that's included is there's a one-year warranty period that'll be applied to the contractor's work. So after that 1 year period, we'll come back and look at it again and make sure that there's no issues, kind of like a home warranty program there. So quite a few visits, quite a bit of eyes on it to make sure it gets built out correctly. So that is it in a nutshell. On the scope, if you go to 9, that's where the fee is broken down. And you know, as Mayor, as you mentioned, it's about 8.7, 8.8% of the construction budget. So you start breaking it down, there's just percentages of that per task. And I can give you the percentages if you want to know what each one is per task as it relates to the total sum. But, it's just the highest construction documents is 30% of the budget. Bidding's 5% and construction services is 15%. So.
So we did have a conversation with your Parks and Building Committee about the services that are not being provided as part of this contract, and I feel like we asked all the questions, and with Dr. Decker and Paul Barton also there to help make sure that there wasn't anything that we missed. I feel like we're at a good spot with everything. I know Rick had outlined a couple of concerns, one being wanting to see the schedule here to make sure we kind of knew what that looked like. We reviewed payment terms and talked about what payment looked like, being that we're a municipality and sometimes our payment process may be a little bit slower than, a corporation's payment process. I feel like we're on the same page there. Rick, was there any other things that you didn't?
I didn't bring my memo, but I think you did. Everything that we questioned was addressed.
Yes,
So.
yes.
This evening, all we have to consider is the pool engineering aspect of it. We did pull out the park master plans for Hatfield and Bedrose for hopeful consideration at next month's meeting. The plans for Hatfield Park in particular are going to be necessary in order to proceed with the Land and Water Conservation Fund grant process. So, but those items are significantly less of a financial obligation than what this initial piece is. So we will be bringing those back for council consideration. The committee wanted to look at those. It was best to look at those separately, but do anticipate that there'll be another agenda item next month with regard to the park master plans.
So if if Hatfield Park's master plan is basically a requirement for the grant funding for this, how much is that, I guess? Because I mean, that's really in addition to this $395,000.
Yeah.
Let me pull it up real quick.
And I don't want to make it I don't want to agree to this and then be like, that's too much next month, and then we're $395,000 dead in the water.
Unless you know it off the top of your head here.
It was, I can't
I
remember.
want to say 29 or.
Yeah, well, Bedrose was in the 20s. I think Hatfield was around 40, but there was the computer renderings with it.
So Hatfield Park was $49,500, Bedrose Park was $26,500, and then if we wanted to do 3D computer visualization, thank you. Yeah, renderings, it was going to be another $6,800 on top of it. So we were looking at another about $50,000 for Hatfield Park.
The pool committee is strongly recommending that we move forward, and we briefly discussed this during Greg's report, but move forward with amending our ordinance for the recreation complex. That would put all of our parks, pools, etc., into a Parks and Recreation Commission that would have that dedicated funding stream that they've had with the previous half-cent sales tax. And so I'm not sure if we'll get that done to where we'll have an ordinance to approve at the next meeting or not, but if we do that, that may be more appropriate to have that board consider rather than this body. So there's still some pieces up in the air, but that is the recommendation that we're receiving is to move forward with that, and then Parks and Recreation would then have the pool and parks projects under their purview.
And Darren, correct me if I'm wrong, in the meeting that we had on Friday with Dr. Decker, I feel like yes, that the master plan is going to be an important part for the next step of the land use and water conservation grant. But maybe not having it all the way done is not going to be necessary to apply for this first stage of it. Would that be a fair?
Yeah, so what, and we've done them before, and typically what they like to see is a phased approach. So they know that it makes it easier for them if they know they have a project that they can fund over multiple years. Kingfisher's been funding trails for 15 years, probably more than that, ever since I've been practicing in Oklahoma. So they just continually apply for those grants, but they have a master plan, and they show that, okay, this is phase 1, phase 2, 3, 4 will be these next projects, and here's the associated dollars. So that's really the purpose of the master plan, would be to show that, yes, here's phase 1, pool's phase 1, we can show that, but phase 2 through whatever, we anticipate those coming in, each year. The other thing, there's a lot of funding for TAP grants, which is a transportation alternative. That funding is going to be larger with the new infrastructure bill. So part of that master plan was to establish what projects would fit what grants. So if there is a trail project, that could be pulled out as a priority, here's priority 1 for that grant, and have dollars attached to it so you can go to apply for that. And I mean, there's all sorts of grant opportunities. So really, it's more yes, I agree that the first phase is the pool. The first application to land and water conservation would be the pool. So we have that. It's just a matter of how much more do you want to show and say this is part of a bigger vision. And I think Hatfield has a good story to tell with the history and all the other things out there, that would be one that they would see as, okay, this is something we can invest in over multiple years. So
one of the things with some of the members of the pool task force that we have that they talked about was specifically with Kimley Horn was the assistance through that grant opportunities and finding unique ways to use grants that exist out there to accomplish different projects. But that I didn't see anywhere in the scope of this that was something that you guys did. Is that?
So this primarily just focused on the pool. You'll see in the other scope for the master plan, it does talk about that, kind of what I described as far as finding grants that may apply to specific pieces of the project. So that was more addressed there, knowing that this was primarily, it's the pool. We know that the land and water conservation is the main target. I mean, we did talk, are there any ways to kind of parlay some of the money and maybe get other grants? It's just the timing of that gets complicated. If, you want to get this open as soon as you can, how long do you wait for these piles of grant opportunities to get them all together, to get them all approved at the same time and get them funded? But we can do some kind of outside pieces, like I mentioned, the parking lot, outside lighting, that kind of thing, that could be pulled out separately, that could be maybe a different grant if you're having a hard time to get the full funding specifically for the pool. I mean, you want to get the pool open, let's figure out a way to get that done.
So those were examples that were given to me about some creative ways that you guys had presented of using different grant funding to cover the parking lot.
Yes.
And so that was.
Yeah, and it's not specifically, mentioned, but if there's we need to bust it out into 2 different packages. Like we have, package 1 is the pool, package 2 is the parking lot and these other items for bidding purposes. I mean, we can do that. We can modify that, and if we need to say that in here, I mean, we can change that as well.
During the construction, do you have any, and this might be out of the scope, but the idea would be, do you have any projections on what it will cost for the city to run this facility? Like the number of employment staff that you think would need to run it, or like even electrical costs?
I know, so Austin, he's done a lot of feasibility studies, and he's within Kimley Horn, so we could have an idea of what it would take, ballpark. It's not a full feasibility study, but I mean, we could obviously tell you this, here's a similar size facility and here's what they're taking to maintain it. Paul's Valley, they have one that we designed. It's been in operation probably 8, 9 years, they would be a good resource, because similar size pool, similar size community, what is it, what is their operations cost, personnel, all of that, so, Bartlesville, they have one, so you could get some Oklahoma, understanding of what it takes, so.
And then, I guess, I've never seen a construction project, at least in my experience, that finished when the contractor said they would get done.
Right.
They always seem to have delays. I've seen a lot of contractors, they like to get a bid and then work on it for a little bit, then take a break and then come back to it. Do you guys, I see that, do you guys provide any like leverage to push them? Or is it just reporting back on, hey, they're behind or something to the subcommittees?
The best way to do that is liquidated damages. I mean, if you want to liquidated damages, but then, and I know there's some legal, and you may know more about it. If you do liquidated damages, sometimes you have to give them incentives too. So if they finish early, they get paid more versus the other way. But that's one way to try to hold them to the schedule, is give them a reason to with the damages.
It's kind of a double-edged sword, because you run the risk of your bids being inflated in order
To cover that, yeah, they know, they anticipate it. You tell them 12 months, and they know they're gonna take 16, so they build in that fee in there, and so, I mean, we can try our best to, but ultimately, it's kind of all of us together to try to, and the other thing is checking references. I mean, we can do a pre-qualification contractor requirement, so we can check references, they have to be pre-qualified, so you just don't get anybody bid on it that has no way of maintaining the schedule, so.
Specifically, I think it was a prison and the state ran, and basically they do the project enough to where it's inconvenient for somebody else to be paid to take over it, but they've done enough work that it's kind of like we need them to finish, so they're like, hey, I got some wiggle room here in a few weeks to take another job on the side and then come back.
And there's bonding, I mean, they're bonded, and they have those bonding requirements and performance bonds and all of that. So, I mean, there's ways, it just gets messy. But the key is making sure you get a good contractor in the beginning and making sure they're pre-qualified to do it. And that's where we'll help, because we have understanding of who some good ones are and try to get them to bid.
I know there was an alternate firm that was considered by the Parks and Building. Did we have a cost estimate from them of what their services would cost?
We didn't have an apples to apples comparison. They ballparked to 7%, but we didn't have a line by line, this is what they're providing in that 7%.
And they also sounded like they had a lot less experience in state than Kimberly.
There were a handful of reasons why Kimberly Horn was the preferred contractor.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. We had I've had that conversation with individuals, but, you know, we never talked price. So, you know, if this, you know, the services they offer are great, but if they're 4 times as expensive, is it really 4 times expensive?
It's not 4 times.
So,
but gosh, I don't know, Sadie and Angela could jump in here, but I think we're getting more for the 8.8%, 8.7% than what we were going to get for the 7%.
Yeah. And from my understanding, you kind of cut down your percentage than what we normally would.
Yeah, I mean, we typically, I mean, especially when you get into specialty projects and you have all the sub-consultants and all, I mean, typically, I mean, it can run 10, even upwards, you know, of that. So, but, you know, at 8.7, I mean, we tried hard. We knew we had those questions coming in of price, you know, and the other firm had given kind of that ballpark price, and we knew that. So, I mean, we obviously want to be as competitive as we can. So, I mean, we feel like we identified everything we were doing in the scope, make sure we weren't overdoing anything, and but make sure we're covered. And I'm here. I mean, I'm in Oklahoma. I've been practicing for over 15 years now. So, you know, I work with Oklahoma communities and definitely don't want to do a project and be gone. And we want to work together again and have a good reputation in the state. So,
And I will say, I didn't take off
No, go ahead, I'm done.
When we had our public input meeting, Darren was there in our public input meeting. He was the only firm, their firm was the only firm represented that showed interest and came and wanted to hear what the citizens had to say, even before we were talking about getting the project out. So they have shown some interest from the very beginning, and I think that shows a lot also about the service that we'll get from them.
You have my cell number. You can call me if you have any complaints. It's on the bottom.
Is the finance committee laid out any forward-thinking plans about funding and seeking that like donation?
So the pool finance committee, they've received, we have cash in the bank at $503,000. We've got a pledge commitment from Share Trust for up to 1.5. So altogether, we have pledged about 1.01 million. The plan is to, use some money from the recreation complex and then raise money, and then the Land and Water Conservation Fund.
And if I remember right, I thought she thought optimistically about $1 million, but predict a little bit more, less than that, at about 800,000.
It's how strong do you want to go in? I mean, you don't want to overshoot it and you get denied because you overshot it. It's the past ones that we've been involved with, about $1 million, 750 to $1 million is kind of the sweet spot. And the grant writer will communicate with them and just kind of gauge the funding available. And obviously the more communities that apply, the more that gets spread around. But one benefit is there hasn't been a lot of Northwest Oklahoma communities represented, so that's a good plus, because they want to see it going to all different parts of the state.
I can't even talk tonight. Dr. Decker has worked with the county commissioners. They are paying for a grant writer to write this grant, who has experience in land use and water conservation. I never say it right. So we are working with an experienced grant writer who will hopefully help guide us to where we need to be for this grant.
So this definitely seems like the right path we want to be walking down to walk around that path. And then I guess the only question, which I assume everybody is worried about, is will we have enough money to get down all the way through that path? But it seems like if we're walking down a path, it sounds like we got the people guiding us that we want to be guiding us. Because I do have faith in the committee, because I felt like they really worked through this issue a lot.
They've worked hard, and they've worked a lot. Any other questions? Thank you, Darren.
Thank you.
I would entertain a motion.
I will motion to approve the city manager to sign an agreement with Kimley Horn to provide planning and design services for the new Hatfield Aquatic Center in an amount not to exceed $395,000.
Second.
I got a motion from Mr. Winters and a second by Mrs. Beer to approve the city manager to sign an agreement with Kimley Horn to provide planning and design services for the new Hatfield Aquatic Center in an amount not to exceed $395,000. Is there any further discussion? Please call the vote.
Winters,
Yes.
Bear,
Yes.
Bowman,
Yes.
Swallow,
Yes.
Dowling,
Yes.
Brooks,
No.
Stelling,
Yes.
Martin.
Yes.
All right. Thank you, Darren.
Thank you.
Appreciate all the work you put into it and what you're going to put into it.
Thank you, we are looking forward to it.
All right, our next item is number 9, discussion on the business ordinance. You guys, we don't have any action for this item tonight. We don't have the ordinance in our hand. Do we want to talk about this tonight, or do we want to push it to our next meeting?
Yeah.
Is it not? Oh, never mind. We don't have any action that we can take tonight. I'll leave it up to you guys whether we continue, just in the interest of time.
I guess I'd motion to table this agenda item for the next meeting. Is that enough?
I would second.
Have a motion from Mr. Dowling, a second from Mr. Winters, to table discussion on ordinance number 2022-001, amending Chapter 12, businesses of the Code of Ordinances for the City of Alva, by replacing Article 2, peddlers and solicitors, in its entirety, and providing for license fees, providing for, that's in there twice, providing for penalties, providing for severability, and a repealer. It's tabled until the next meeting on March, what's the date?
21st.
21st. Is there any further discussion?
I might suggest that each of you take a look at that, and that's the basic draft of that ordinance. See if there's any issues that you perceive or any problems. Let your committee chairs know that, so that if we need to make any changes, we can make those changes.
Is that attached somewhere where everybody can see it? And that way
It's
they
attached
can-
to the agenda, yes.
Okay. That way they can come next time and be
I'll
prepared.
see it now. It has been through ordinance committee.
Yeah.
And if you'd like me to email it out to you directly, I can do that as well, so just let me know, whatever's easiest.
Did you intend for us to ask those questions of them now or just in the meantime?
In the meantime.
Okay, that's, thank you.
Any further discussion? Please call the vote.
Dowling,
Yes.
Winters,
Yes.
Fair,
Yes.
Stelling,
Yes.
Swallow,
Yes.
Martin,
Yes.
Bowman,
Yes.
Brooks.
Yes.
All right. Item number 11, discussion and action to open a checking account for 522 district funds. In order to receive the allotted funds from the 522 district, we need to open a separate interest-bearing account for the funds to be released to from the district. What we discussed in Finance Committee was that this would be an interest-bearing account at Bank Central, where we have all our other funds, and more than likely be either a money market or an interest-bearing checking account, one of the two, whichever suits our needs best. But that's what we're looking at. Anything else?
Nope.
I would entertain a motion.
I'd make a motion to open a checking account for the 522 district funds.
Second.
Have a motion by Mr. Stelling, a second by Mr. Bowman, to open a checking account for 522 district funds. Is there any further discussion?
I have a question. I don't remember if I asked this in finance or not, but I don't remember the answer to it. On this particular piece, do they have, does state statute legally allow them to make this requirement of us?
I haven't been asked to look at it, I can.
I can't remember. It's been too long since I've looked at it. That is
And
something-
I would have to go back and look at it as well, I don't know. We can,
I would anticipate it does, but I don't know that for a fact. You're talking about as opposed to putting it in general fund?
Yeah. Yeah, just if they, the type of account that has to be its own separate account for them to release funds to us.
And I don't know, I can't tell you if it's required. It seems like that would be financially responsible
I agree
to
with
be
that.
able to
I'm just
identify it.
wondering if
I
they,
mean, there wouldn't be a prohibition against this being approved tonight. It might not be required, but it certainly would be smart.
Any other discussion?
Are we going to do a bidding process to see what account is most advantageous for us to open? Or have we already made the selection and determination?
We have not made a selection and determination. The only thing that was recommended coming out of finance is that it be at Bank Central, because that's where the rest of our business is.
and I will say, we discussed the fact, because this is an interest-bearing account, and the fact that there could be a difference in interest between accounts. The reality is, the cash isn't going to stay in this account.
Yeah,
Because it's going to be reimbursement for other expenses after they've already been expensed. So it will have to be then moved. So the interest rate is really irrelevant. because it'll be in their days.
And the other piece of it is for ease in transferring those funds out of that account, that's why the discussion to have it at Bank Central where our primary checking account is, it was just going to be simpler all the way around. And that's, I think, pretty much the process in opening all the other accounts that we've opened in the last 6 to 8 months is they've been there for just ease of transferring those monies from our pooled cash account out, or the other way. Does that answer your question?
It does.
Any other questions? Please call the vote.
Stelling,
Yes.
Bowman,
Yes.
Swallow,
Yes.
Dowling,
Yes.
Winters,
Abstain.
Martin,
Yes.
Fair,
Yes.
Brooks.
Yes.
All right, thank you. Item 12 is discussion and action to appoint members to the Executive Search Committee to hire a new business manager. In front of you, let's see, do they have the list?
They do, it's the very last page in their packet.
In front of you, what I'd like to do, you have business cards, paper, or index cards, paper clipped in front of you. What I would like for you to do in this process is we'll go first with community members, and we'll figure out who our community members are going to be, and then we will go to council member selection, and then Angelica will identify her selection for the employee member of the committee. I will tell you a little bit about the community members that are nominated. I'm not going to go in any particular order here, but Brandon Sherman was one who was recommended by a council member. Of course, Brandon is a former member of the city council and has been through the process of the search process for a city business manager. And he also called me to express his interest before I called him. So the other person that contacted me was Dr. Decker. I think everybody's familiar with Dr. Decker. She has quite a bit of experience with working with the city manager in different capacities as a member of the community. And it doesn't matter if it's for community development projects that she's participating in or other types of things. But she does bring a wealth of experience to the table and definitely some opinions on what would make a good business manager. Mary Hamilton was a member of the council and the personnel committee that went through the last process of the search. She, of course, is owner of Alva's Market. I think everybody knows she's a retired school teacher here in town. Paul Kinsey. Paul has had a close working relationship with the business manager as a member of the airport board. Paul's been someone that has some insight into different qualities that a business manager is going to have to be successful by having served in that capacity on the airport board. He works closely with Angelica, so I think Paul would have good input to provide. Warden Melton, retired Warden Melton, is someone that has had an extensive amount of experience in the correction system, but as that she's had a lot of leadership responsibilities in various different aspects across the state, understands a lot about state government and how that has to work in conjunction with the municipality. And so I asked Warden Melton to consider being on this. And then Dr. David Pakey. David, I'll give him the distinction whether he's earned it or not. I think he probably has. Other than Rick Cunningham, he's probably been to more city council meetings than anybody I know. He, in his position at the university, he does deal with a lot of issues that mutually affect the university and the city. He's one that has observed how business managers operate in the council chambers, but he's also been one to work with business managers in his day-to-day capacities. So those are the recommendations that I have for you to consider. What I'll ask you to do is one per card, write down 2 names, pass them forward.
2 at community.
Choose 2. Kelly,
Can you explain the instructions again?
write 2 names down of the, you got that page, right?
Yes.
On one card, write 1 name.
Okay.
On another card.
One per card, so that kind of.
Yeah. 1 name per card. And if you'll pass them to the center, we'll start tallying. Oh, this is a secret. This is a secret ballot. I don't know.
I don't know why, but for some reason, I just felt like I should take out the entire card.
No, it doesn't, Taylor, sorry.
Grab Rachel while you're at it.
Is that ballot harvesting?
Okay. All right, it will be Dr. Decker and Dr. Pakey. I will let the other interested folks know, but I don't think we had really a bad option there to choose from. Now, from the people around the room, around this table, not including me, Angelica, or Rick, choose 3 more. If any of you would like to speak for yourself as why you want to be on the committee, this would be your opportunity to do so.
I'd be interested in serving on the committee. I've worked with Angelica. I don't necessarily have the experience of some of the members on the council, but I've lived in Alva my entire life and have a pretty good idea of how it has affected the citizens over the past 7 decades.
I would also be interested, just with my finance background, and I know it's kind of important for the city manager to have an understanding of that too. Not the most important, but it's vital, so I'd be interested as well.
I as well, as part of the process with Angelica, so.
I'd be interested in the process. As part of the last one, I think my background lends well to the hiring process.
Thanks, sir.
Get your steps in.
And you're on camera.
Oh, yeah.
He was right in front of it too.
I like the turkey dance.
Yeah.
I know.
I'm saying we might double our
Is that your
subscriber
rolling
view on
dance?
YouTube now.
That's right, we might.
Maybe we get some extra light.
Did you pre-bowl? Yeah.
Good thing we did all 3.
Yeah. I'm not making it fast.
Oh, this is a marathon. 7-way tie. votes each, it'll be Mr. Winters, Mr. Martin, and Mrs. Beer. Taylor, you were close. You're close. At 4. Okay, Angelica, who is the final member?
Drake Lewis will be the final member of our team.
Okay, so, just so we're clear on what we're approving, we are approving Kay Decker, David Pakey, Daniel Winters, Connor Martin, Sadie Beer, and Drake Lewis to serve as the members of the Executive Search Committee to hire a new business manager. Is there a motion?
Just out of curiosity, does anybody that serve on this member, do they, I think, would preclude themselves from serving in the capacity of the city business manager or their family serving in?
This committee will not have any decision-making authority, so I don't believe that would preclude them.
No.
I don't know that I'd want to do it if I were thinking about it, but
I'm not very legal, that
Yeah,
you're on a committee to discuss it, and I have seen many committees where someone has surfaced out of that committee to a leadership position, so it doesn't exclude them, because the council still has to approve that.
I'd make a motion that the names you had mentioned be appointed as executive search committee, hire a new business manager.
Second.
I have a motion by Mr. Stelling and a second by Mr. Winters to appoint Kay Decker, David Pakey, Daniel Winters, Connor Martin, Sadie Beer, and Drake Lewis to the Executive Search Committee to hire a new business manager. Is there any further discussion? Please call the vote.
Stelling,
Yes.
Winters,
Yes.
Brooks,
No.
Dowling,
Yes.
Martin,
Yes.
Bowman,
Yes.
Bear,
Yes.
and Swallow.
Yes.
All right, thank you all. Next item is discussion and action to approve the Alva Area Chamber of Commerce's appointment of Scott Klein to the Tourism Tax Commission. With Dr. Tucker's unanticipated passing, the tourism tax has a vacancy. There are 2 seats on the Tourism Tax Commission, which are recommendations by the Chamber of Commerce. Dr. Tucker's was one of those seats. And so the Chamber of Commerce is recommending for appointment Scott Klein. Scott is willing to serve.
And I did not add this to the agenda, but it's to fill the unexpired term ending June 2022. So it's just for a few months.
And then it'll be up for reconsideration.
Yes.
I would motion to approve the Alva Area Chamber of Commerce's appointment of Scott Klein to the Tourism Tax Commission for the term ending in 2022.
Second.
Is there a second?
Second.
Oh. Thank you. I have a motion by Mr. Winters, a second by Mr. Martin to approve the appointment of Scott Klein to the Tourism Tax Commission for the unexpired term ending in June 2022. Is there any further discussion?
Is he a member of any of the organizations that receive funding from the tourism?
He is a member of Rotary, but it's my, is he not?
I think it's his brother.
Oh, that is
Jesse's
Jesse.
a member, Scott's not.
It was discussed at the Chamber of Commerce meeting, and it was my understanding that they're not planning to apply going forward for certain times. So, but in that instance, if there was a relationship, he could abstain from that vote.
Would he be required to, though? I'm just curious, because we don't.
He wouldn't be required to. What he is required to do is if he has some interest in it, he must tell the board that before, he could actually vote under the law, but he would have to.
I mean, I think it'd be fine, I just have to question, and if somebody had it, I wouldn't think they would.
Well, he would have to be a direct recipient of funds or indirect recipient of those funds to have it.
He'd have to have some beneficial interest in it.
Yeah.
That could be arguable, but if you're a member of a board or something that got the benefit of that. So it'd be better for an extension in those cases.
I think we've had the same Connor, like Chamber has applied for tourism tax monies, and when Connor was on the Chamber as president, he recused himself from those votes, so.
But he's not a member of Rotary.
Or any of the other organizations.
I'm not aware of any,
I mean,
other than the
quite
chamber.
a few.
And I must have misunderstood, that was the only conversation that came up was the fireworks piece.
Yeah.
I mean, there's race, and there's a number of other organizations.
But not that
A lot
I'm
of
aware
mayors
of.
do.
No, and I know for a fact he's not a Rotary member. He's a volunteer that helps with the fireworks show.
Yeah.
But any further discussion?
Did he, I guess, mention a specific vision that he saw as being a member of the tax commission? Is that too grand of an idea for some?
I don't know. I know that the chamber discussed it with him and recommended his appointment. He was willing to serve. I don't know if he expressed any vision or plans. Is there any further discussion? Please call the vote.
Winters,
Yes.
Martin,
Yes.
Bear,
Yes.
Brooks,
Abstain.
Stelling,
Yes.
Dowling,
I guess I'll abstain.
Swallow,
Yes.
Bowman,
Yes.
All right. And that concludes, we don't have any new business. Do we have remarks and inquiries by council members?
I want to say one thing, because I didn't get an opportunity, because it hit me as we were voting on item 11. The reason I abstained from that vote was because of my relationship with Bank Central and the discussion of the account being open with Bank Central. So I just wanted to clarify that.
Any other remarks from council members? Okay, we'll adjourn the city council meeting and open the utility authority meeting. Heather, when you're ready, will you please call the roll?
sorry, Bowman,
Here.
Stelling,
Here.
Dowling,
Here.
Swallow,
Here.
Winters,
Here.
Martin,
Here.
Brooks,
Here.
Bear.
Here.
All right, item 3 is discussion and action on the consent agenda. All of the following items which concern reports and items of a routine nature normally approved at AUA meetings will be approved by one vote of the authority. Any trustee desiring to discuss an item on the consent agenda may request that it be removed from the consent agenda and placed for discussion as the next item on the regular agenda. It will then be considered separately. The consent agenda consists of consideration and action on the following items. Item A, approval of the minutes of the regular meeting of January 18th, 2022. Item B, approval of claims in the amount of $70,091.76 and payroll expenses of $49,168.33. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Have a motion by Mr. Winters and a second by Mr. Stelling to approve the consent agenda. Is there any further discussion? Please call the vote.
Winters,
Yes.
Stelling,
Yes.
Bear,
Yes.
Brooks,
Yes.
Dowling,
Yes.
Swallow,
Yes.
Martin,
Yes.
Bowman.
Yes.
Item 5 is discussion and action to approve the purchase of a 2022 Freightliner M2106 with the VIN number 3ALACWF-CXNDNH8699 with a New Way 11-yard Viper Packer from Premier Truck Group in an amount not to exceed $154,994. Unit, as you can see in the background information, Unit 304 has been out of service since the fall. It's been determined determined that we need to either rent or buy a new garbage truck. Sanitation and Finance Committee have both reviewed the options and are recommending this purchase. I don't want to, prolong the meeting any, but sanitation has been in dire need of a new vehicle or newer at minimum for quite some time. This would get them back to a better operating position. It is it should have a new vehicle, it'll have some warranty, it'll have some lifespan to it that we have not been used to in quite some time. I'm urging you guys to make a motion to approve this. But is there anything else to add?
There has been issues with, we've looked at new trucks, but just actually finding something and then timeline, like this company has agreed to actually kind of put our name on this, thinking that we're gonna get it, because everything's just so hard to come about anymore. Like Kelly said, we're dire need of something. We spend a lot of money on maintenance on some of the other trucks and stuff, and they go around with the little truck and throwing trash bags up to the top and stuff, so they have worked awful hard.
We've been operating with 2 trash trucks when we typically are, I won't even say normal because it's not been normal for a really long time, but we are supposed to be running with 3 trash trucks. That's how it should be efficiently done. And so in an effort to get done more quickly, we do take the pickup out or the dump truck out and pick up trash in one of those vehicles. We've exhausted what we feel like are the responsible maintenance items to do to try to get the other truck back into play. And I feel, I think Ronnie, our Public Works Director, also feels that it's not worth spending more money in something that may or may not work, that we really need to be looking at a new option, and I feel like this is the most appropriate option. It is currently being manufactured. Did you get an updated timetable on it?
No, he didn't quite get back with me in time today, but it's been probably 8 to 10 weeks. They said anywhere from 8 to 16 weeks. They're having 8 of them built, and our name's already on one of them. It's already been, and that was with, he put in a little bit of COVID, a little bit of electronics, just some things that may push it back, but he said it wouldn't be, it would have to be something drastic for him not to get the order of trucks in within the 16-week period. And we're 8 to 10 weeks or better than that.
I would motion to approve the purchase of a 2022 Freightliner M2106 with the VIN number stated with a new 11-yard Viper Packer from Premier Truck Group in an amount not to exceed $154,994.
Second.
I was just going to ask, this was not part of the budget that we originally approved, is it?
No, so this purchase would basically eliminate any other capital improvements that were budgeted for the sanitation department.
What are we leaving out there?
So we, polycarts was the big purchase there. We had also budgeted for some roll-off dumpsters, which we're not planning to purchase those anyway.
And we're talking about it.
Yep, so those are the biggest pieces that we approved,
Okay.
and so
Were
if we
there some
would,
small 2-yard dumpsters on that list too? Or did we already?
they
do
were,
those?
we've already done those, so.
Sounds like we need a truck to use the polycarts more than we need polycarts.
So if we would want to move forward with polycarts, we would have to look at a budget amendment or budget adjustment to do that, so.
I have a motion by Mr. Winters and a second by Mr. Stilling to approve the purchase of a 2022 Freightliner M2106 with the VIN number as stated in the agenda, and a New Way 11-yard Viper Packer from Premier Truck Group in an amount not to exceed $154,994. Is there any further discussion? Please call the vote.
Winters,
Yes.
Stelling,
Yes.
Beer,
Yes.
Brooks,
Yes.
Bowman,
Yes.
Martin,
Yes.
Dowling,
Yes.
Swallow.
Yes.
We are adjourned for the Utility Authority meeting. And we'll call to order the regular Alva Economic Development Authority meeting. Heather, when you're ready, please call the roll.
Winters,
Here.
Martin,
Here.
Dowling,
Here.
Swallow,
Here.
Bowman,
Here.
Stelling,
Here.
Thayer,
Here.
Brooks.
Here.
Item 3 is discussion and action on the consent agenda. All of the following items which concern reports and items of a routine nature normally approved at AEDA meetings will be approved by one vote of the authority. Any trustee desiring to discuss an item on the consent agenda may request that it be removed from the consent agenda and placed for discussion as the next item on the regular agenda. It will then be considered separately. The consent agenda consists of the consideration and action on the following items. Item A, approval of the minutes of the regular meeting of January 18th, 2022. Item B, approval of claims in the amount of $18,982.16 and payroll expenses of $14,224.24. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I move to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
I have a motion by Mr. Stelling and a second by Mr. Winters to approve the consent agenda. Is there any further discussion? Please call the vote.
Stelling,
Yes.
Winters,
Yes.
Brooks,
Yes.
Bowman,
Yes.
Martin,
Yes.
Swallow,
Yes.
Dowling,
Yes.
Thayer.
Yes.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. We are adjourned.